over to our presenter, Miss Amanda Neville.
Good morning, everybody. Hope you all can hear me. Glad to be with you again on another wonderful Friday morning. So today we're going to talk about the C series worksheets. So I wanted to let you all know I did send out the presentation yesterday afternoon around 2. I did see one person come in registered late, and I got that sent off this morning, but hopefully you all received that. Also, we did make a change to this webinar, and you should have received an email with that update as well. So we are only going to talk about the C series worksheets today. We're reviewing the D series worksheets currently, and we'll send out a Gov delivery as soon as we are able to have a D series webinar scheduled. We had previously anticipated that we'd only have one D series, and that the D series is returning to work. And so we thought we'd only have one, and we actually have 4 in the review process right now with our rules team. So that's why we're not reviewing them today. We do apologize, but as soon as we have those ready, approved, we will get a webinar scheduled and show you how to use those D series worksheets. So wanted to address that at the top. Hopefully you did receive that update email, and let's get underway. So with the worksheets, these are in reference to WAC 182-31030 and also in accordance with SEBB policy 11-1. So this is just reminders. Hopefully you guys have been well familiar with all of the worksheets. You're using them when you're hiring new people, using them when you're losing somebody, they're no longer eligible for benefits, but really these worksheets are to help you determine eligibility for the employer contribution. So anytime there is a change in eligibility, we want to use these worksheets. So the worksheets do facilitate decisions in compliance with RCW and WAC, so those rules that follow the SEBB program. They provide required notice and information to the employees. It confirms receipt of the required notice and information as well. And it provides guidance to you guys, the benefits administrators, and suggestions as well. So we're going to go through each of the C series worksheets in today's presentation. Another important thing to remember, hopefully you guys are doing this, you want to go to the SEBB Benefits Administrator's website every time you're going to fill out a worksheet. You do not want to save these Excel files on your computer because we do update them. We update them frequently, and you could be using an old, outdated Excel document that maybe isn't up to date. And today is going to be a perfect example of that because I'm going to show you what the C series worksheets look like as it stands right now, and we're also going to talk about a couple small changes that may be coming in those. So when your worksheet has been completed, you do want to provide a copy to the employee so they can review it and sign and date, and the employee needs to return the signed copy or an email confirming receipt to you. You then, as the BA, need to sign and date and provide a copy of the signed worksheet to the employee so they can keep a signed copy as well. And then you want to file that worksheet in the employee's personnel file. So whether that means you have an actual physical file or if you have an online filing system, you can keep it there as well. But you do want to keep a copy of it. And there are circumstances, especially right now, we're all working from home, we're not in the office. And so if you're unable to provide the employee with a physical copy of the worksheet, if you're able to send them an email, have a red receipt. Some of you guys use Gmail, so I know a red receipt is not possible. Include a copy of the email that you sent. You just want to keep some kind of copy of the notification that you provided that worksheet to the employee. That is the most important piece. So making sure you keep record that you provided the employee with the worksheet that determines their eligibility status. So let's talk a little bit about the 5 C series worksheets. So we have our C1 worksheet. This is for an employee who is currently eligible for benefits and they are leaving work on an approved leave without pay, workers' compensation, they're called to active duty, they've been laid off, they're applying for disability retirement, or they're appealing a grievance. We have our C2 worksheet. This is for an employee who is currently eligible for benefits and they cease active work during an approved FMLA. We have our C3 worksheet for a school employee who is currently eligible and is leaving work due to the employment relationship being terminated. So key piece here is the employment relationship is being terminated. The C4 is for employees who are leaving employment due to retirement. And then we have the C5 worksheet for one of those unfortunate circumstances where we may have an employee pass away. So those are the 5 worksheets in this C series. And let's talk a little bit about updates. So I told you, don't save the Excel files on your computer. And why is that? They get updated frequently. And one of the things that we have submitted right now to our rules team to review and approve updated C series worksheets is to include, as I have on the screen here, we have, you're going to see in bright red, paid family and medical leave. Now, why is that? So this is for an employee who is currently eligible for benefits and they're leaving work on an approved leave. So remember, paid family and medical leave, that's the one through the state, through the Employment Security Department, ESD. I don't know why I confused myself on that. But for that paid family and medical leave on its own is not a protected leave. So it's not like the FMLA. If they are not anticipated to still reach 630 hours when they go out on that paid family and medical leave, they may lose their benefits. So we're asking rules to review this updated C1 worksheet to include this paid family and medical leave piece. And we will go through these worksheets here in just a moment. On the other side of that coin, on the C2 worksheet, we are asking for this additional statement to be included. So employee is currently eligible for benefits and ceases active work during approved FMLA or PFML, which is concurrent or overlapping with FMLA. So we've been talking to you guys about this in their last few webinars, explaining how if an employee is on approved FMLA, they're also approved for that paid family medical leave as long as they run concurrently or overlap with at least 1 day, the employee does remain eligible for the employer contribution towards their benefits. So they have to be concurrent or overlapping with that FMLA, and they will remain on benefits eligible for the employer contribution. So these updates haven't been made in the worksheets quite yet. We are waiting for that to happen, and once they are updated, they will be on the website. The other update that we are looking to do is to make a very slight change on the C4, the one for employees who are retiring. Currently, it references the date of retirement, which is fine, but we do want this C4 worksheet to act as notification of the coverage ending. And so we are looking to get that changed, a minor change, just to say the date the employee's coverage will terminate instead of the date of retirement. So stay on the lookout for these updates to these 3 worksheets. So now we are going to jump into actually going through these worksheets. So I did provide some scenarios here. Some of them may look familiar from our Preparing for the End of the School Year webinar. I used some of those, but we are going to jump in and start using those Excel worksheets. So here we have Jordan. Jordan is an eligible school employee, and Jordan was approved for workers' comp. So Jordan's leave is approved on March 15th. Jordan is no longer anticipated to reach 630 hours now that she's going out on workers' comp. So that employer contribution towards SEBB benefits will end March 31st, last day of the month. So you as the VA will need to go in and terminate the employee's coverage in SEBB My account. And then you have to complete and provide the C1 worksheet to Jordan. So let's go take a look at that C1 worksheet. Now you guys will have to bear with me a little bit. We're gonna have to go in and out of PowerPoint to Excel. So I will try and move slowly so I don't hurt anybody's eyes. But let's go ahead and move to the C1 worksheet. All right, so here is the C1 worksheet. Again, it's an Excel document. It is protected, and so there's very few boxes that you're actually able to put information in. So I just want to address that right up front. And here this says at the very top, it provides you with exactly what scenario we're working with. So an employee who is currently eligible for benefits and leaving work on an approved with leave without pay, workers' comp, called to active duty, layoff, applying for disability, retirement, or appealing agreements. So we are going to enter the employee's name. And Jordan works for SEBB Organization A. Now down below these three fields, it provides you with some reminders. And this is really for you guys to review to make sure you're using the correct worksheet. And so again, it references here in this first bullet what scenarios we're working with. It says here on the second bullet, if the employee is going on approved leave through FMLA or PFML, you want to see the C2 worksheet. And this third bullet here says if the employee is anticipated to work fewer hours due to a revision in work pattern, see the B3 worksheet. So it's providing you several opportunities to do a check that you're using the correct worksheet. So let's move down here into section 1, eligibility requirements for the employer contribution. So it's asking us, the employee has been authorized for leave without pay, workers' compensation, called to active duty, layoff, applying for disability, retirement, or appealing a grievance. And the next box here has already worked or remains anticipated to work at least 630 hours in the school year. It's asking us to enter a yes or a no. So if we said yes on this, which is not what our scenario is, but let's just take a look. If we enter a Y for yes and we hit enter, it's providing us a decision in the next box here. So eligibility decision. If we put a yes in this box, it's bringing us a decision down here that says if the answer to the requirements is yes, employee remains eligible for the employer contribution. Continue on with section 6. So if we say yes, they still remain eligible.
Hey, Amanda, really quick.
Yes.
Some people are having a little bit of a hard time seeing the font. Can you go ahead and enlarge the screen a little bit and zoom in?
Yes.
See if that
Is
helps
this
them.
better? I know
it looks
these
better to me.
Okay. I know these Excel documents are a little tough and
Yeah.
always
Thank
hard
you.
because we all have different screen sizes and all that. So thank you. I appreciate that. All right. So let's move back into our scenario here. We said that Jordan is no longer anticipated to reach 630 hours. So I'm going to change this to an N and I'm going to hit enter. So now we have our eligibility decision of no. It says if the answer to the requirements is no, employee is no longer eligible for the employer contribution. Continue with section 2. Section 2 says the date the employee will stop working. Enter the date the employee last worked prior to leaving work due to the requirements in section 1. Now, I told you in our scenario earlier that Jordan's last day, she was approved for leave on March 15th. So I am going back in time. I'm using 2020 because that's what's easiest in my head right now. It's already been a really long year. I don't want to even think about going into 2021 yet. So we're going to stick with 2020 for the ease of using my brain today. So I'm going to hit enter after 3:15. It's going to take us down to the date the employer contribution ends. So we want to enter the date when eligibility for the employer contribution ends, which is the last day of the month in which a revision in the work pattern is effective. So Jordan was approved for leave. Last day of work was March 15th. Benefits will end the end of the month, so March 31st. Now, here's where you're going to notice my screen's going to jump around a little bit, but I want you guys to see how these worksheets actually function. So I type in 3/31, the last day of the month. If I hit enter, it's going to drop me down to section 7, which is for signature and date. So I am going to go back up here a little bit so we can review these other sections. Section 4, when coverage ends. Now remember, the point of these worksheets is, one, to help you guys determine that eligibility for the employer contribution, but it also provides notice to the employee on what their options are. In this case scenario, she's losing benefits, eligibility for the employer contribution. So it's letting her know when those benefits will end, the medical, dental, vision, etc., and the participation in the medical FSA or DCAP program. All of those will end the last day of the month in which the employer contribution is no longer, she's no longer eligible for the employer contribution. We move to section 5 here, and this talks about continuation of coverage options. So here's where that notification lies for the employee. Remember, once we enter that termination into SEBB My account, the SEBB continuation coverage election notice will be sent out automatically by the healthcare authority to the employee within 14 days of entering that termination. So you enter the termination in SEBB My account. Remember, we can do that as early as the first of the month prior to the termination. So let's say the employee is terminating July 31st. We could enter that as early as June 1st. We can't do any earlier than that. So we've had a few questions in the last week or so about terminations. At the end of the school year, August 31st, you will not be able to enter those until July 1st. Got a little off track there, but I figured I would mention that since we have had questions. So we enter the termination, that election notice booklet will be sent out 14 days, and the employee has continuation of coverage options here, section 5. It talks about how to file claims here in section 6 for long-term disability or life insurance if they so need to. And then we have section 7, which is for that signature and date. This talks about the rules and policies, ability to appeal any decisions, and acknowledgement that they did receive this notification. So here's where the employee would sign and date. And then once you receive that back, you as the benefits administrator will sign and date. That HCA code is we call it an agency code. If you don't know where to find this, if you go in SEBB My account under your organization profile tab, it is a 6-digit code. All of yours start with 600. Then it will be a letter and 2 numbers. So 600 H15. That's off the top of my head. I'm sorry if I called out your district. It's just the first thing that came to my head, but wanted to make sure I referenced what that code was. So that is the C1 worksheet that we would provide to Jordan to let her know that her benefits are ending March 31st in this scenario. All right, so hang with me here as we jump back to PowerPoint. So our next scenario, we have Carmen. Carmen is an eligible school employee and has been approved to go on FMLA. Carmen's leave is approved on January 20th. So we're going to complete and provide the C2 worksheet to Carmen. Back to Excel we go. Let me make this a little bit bigger so we can all see it. All right, so again, at the top of our C2 worksheet, it tells us the circumstance: employee is currently eligible for benefits and ceases active work and is approved for FMLA or PFML. So one thing before we jump into using this worksheet that I want to talk to you guys about, this is the one worksheet that is a little bit different than the rest that you're probably used to seeing. Now, I'm going to try and move my mouse slowly. Down at the bottom of Excel here, you're going to see two tabs. One is for employee use. That's the one that we're seeing here on the screen now. And the other tab says SEBB org use. So this basically is providing you guidance to understand what is on the employee use tab. So it's going to go over the different options that we're going to talk about in just a moment. I just wanted to point this out because this is the one worksheet that is a little bit different, that has two different tabs. And this tab is really for you guys to look at and understand what is on the employee use tab. So let's head back to the employee side here. And it says employee. For a yes or no answer. Now, if I say no and put in the N, again, it's going to provide us with an eligibility decision down here. It says if the answer is no to the requirement above, a different worksheet may apply. So in our circumstance for Carmen, she was approved for FMLA, so I'm going to put in the yes. And it's providing us with the decision that yes, the Carmen may continue to receive the employer contribution towards SEBB benefits. Continue with number 2 of this worksheet. So we go to section 2 here, and this is asking for the date FMLA or PFML leave begins. So we said that her FMLA was approved on January 20th. Again, I'm sticking with this year because it's easy for me to remember. So we move into section 3 here. And remember I told you about the SEBB organization use tab. This is where you're going to see what those options 1 or 2 are. And so the SEBB org tab explains all of these and how you may be involved. Now you may be asking yourself, how do I know the answers to these? Is it necessary for me to fill this out when these are employee decisions? And I really think it's important, if you have an employee going out on FMLA, hopefully you're having this conversation with them or they've had the conversation with you to just see, because as you can see here in this first box, it's asking us about medical. Now, if the employee is enrolled in medical and they want to stay in medical while they go out on FMLA, nothing needs to happen. They can continue to receive the Again, at the top of the worksheet, we have that reminder of what this worksheet is for. So a currently eligible school employee leaving work due to the employment relationship being terminated. So this worksheet is in regards to an employee who is no give various scenarios of why you may be using a different worksheet. So here, we're going to go through these reminders really quick. This worksheet determines eligibility for SEBB continuation coverage for an employee currently eligible for the employer contribution when a SEBB organization terminates the employment relationship or the school employee terminates the employment relationship. So if the eligible employee is leaving work on an authorized leave, you'd want to use that C1. If the eligible employee ceases work due to an approved FMLA, you want to use that C2. And if the employee is retiring, you want to use the C4, which we'll go through in just a moment. And here's really why I wanted to point this out. If the employee becomes ineligible for SEBB program benefits due to a revision in work pattern, you want to use that B3 worksheet. So again, the C3 is for when they're actually terminating their employment relationship with your district or charter school or ESD. This is for when they're no longer employed with you. If they have just become ineligible and are still employed, you want to use that B3 worksheet. So let's go back here and we're going to put in Tim's name. Tim works for Granite Falls. All right, so section 1, when the employer contribution ends, the employment relationship was terminated by the school employee or SEBB organization. Again, it's asking us for a yes or a no. And I'm showing you guys both options, even though I did provide you with a scenario, just so you can see how the functionality of these worksheets goes. And so you're really familiar with how you fill these out for any of the scenarios that your employees may be. It really helps you determine their eligibility status. So that's why there's always going to be different options. So let's say that before we get to our true scenario, let's say that no, Tim's relationship wasn't terminated by him or the SEBB organization. So under section 2, the eligibility decision, it says if the answer is no to section 1, the employee remains eligible for the employer contribution, or maybe you need to review a different worksheet. So here he did resign his employment. So we're going to go back up and put a Y in section 1. And it says if the answer to section 1 is yes, employee may be eligible for continuation of coverage. Continue with number 3 of this worksheet. So let's scroll down to section 3 here. Date employer contribution ends. So if the SEBB organization terminates the employment relationship, eligibility for the employer contribution ends the last day of the month in which the employer initiated termination notice is effective. If the school employee terminates the employment relationship, eligibility for the employer contribution ends the last day of the month in which the school employee's resignation is effective. Now you might be saying, that sounded exactly the same. And it does, it sounds very similar, but just keep in mind, if the school employee terminates their employment relationship, so they resign, the eligibility for the employer contribution ends the last day of the month in which the resignation is effective. So this is important if you have a really awesome employee who gives you their resignation letter in let's just say January, and their resignation is at the end of June, it's the date the resignation is effective. So that's why I really wanted to make that distinction here. And Tim, in our example, did resign effective June 30th. So I'm going to enter June 30th, 2020. Here we're going to go to section 4. When coverage ends, again, this is providing notification to the employee when their coverage ends. Options in section 5 for continuation of coverage. They will receive that continuation coverage election notice within 14 days after you terminate them in SEBB My account. And then we move again to section 6 for that signature and date, providing them with appeals rights, rules and policies. So you'll have them sign and then sign and date, and then you as well will sign and date and keep a copy.
All right, we do have one question. After a worksheet is completed, I know we are supposed to keep a copy in their file and give one to the employee, but do we also upload one in SEBB My account online? The answer is no. You just want to give one to the employee and then keep one in their personnel file. We do not require that any go into SEBB My account. And that is all.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so let's head back into the presentation. Thanks for hanging with me with all the back and forth, but hopefully this is helpful to you guys to actually review going through the worksheets, going through each section and how to use them. So, all right, we have Bob here. Bob is going to retire and is choosing his choosing to start his pension July 1st. So Bob submitted his letter of resignation. It's effective June 17th. Bob's SEBB benefits will end the end of the month, June 30th. So we want to terminate that coverage in SEBB My account. And we want to complete and provide the C4 worksheet. So let's go take a look at the C4 worksheet. Enlarge this a little bit for you. There we go. So again, it tells us what the worksheet is that we're using for a retiring school employee. We have Bob here. So this is one of those updates that we talked about at the beginning of the presentation. Right now, it is asking us to enter the effective date of retirement, which we talked about is July 1st. So I will enter that date. But hopefully we do have the C4 updated here soon, and this will actually ask for the last day of coverage for their SEBB benefits. So this worksheet does provide as notification that their benefits are ending. So I just want to be clear, this does have a lot of guidance for the retiring employee as well, but this C4 does provide the notification that their benefits are ending. So if we go into section 2 here, it does talk about when those benefits are going to end, last day of the month in which they're eligible for the employer contribution. If we go to section 3 here, it's going to talk about retiree options for continuation coverage. Now, one important thing to remember, we've talked about this a little bit, is we terminate the employee in SEBB My account. We use that retirement as the termination reason. Even though we put in retirement, they're still going to receive a continuation of coverage election notice within 14 days, right? Because just because we say that they're retiring doesn't mean they have to enroll in any kind of retiree coverage. They still have the opportunity to enroll in continuation coverage. So they're going to automatically receive that election notice booklet. What they won't get is the PEB retiree enrollment guide. So they would actually have to call PEB customer service to request a retiree enrollment guide. Or as we've told you guys before, you can order some of those retiree guides to have on hand for your retiring employees. So just wanted to make that clear. They will receive that continuation coverage election notice regardless of the termination reason that you enter in SEBB My account. Section 4 here is going to talk about eligibility requirements for that PEB retiree coverage. We're not going to go into that today. We do have an upcoming webinar to talk a little bit more about retiree coverage, but it does provide some guidance here if they're in Plan 1 or 2 versus Plan 3 and what they may need to do. And section 5 here talks about procedural requirements if they want to enroll or defer their PEB retiree coverage. So it walks them through everything they need to do. Life insurance, oops, sorry about that. Life insurance options and medical FSA as well. So this one you'll see there is not a signature and date, but just know that this C4 worksheet does provide that notification that their benefits are ending. So you do want to fill this out and provide it to the retiring employee. All righty, let us go back to the last of the C series worksheets. So in the unfortunate circumstance that we do have an employee pass away, there are options to continue coverage for any surviving dependents of a deceased employee. So there's SEBB continuation coverage, or there's PEB retiree coverage available to them. So benefits will end the last day of the month of death. You will need to terminate the coverage for that employee in SEBB My account. And you'll want to complete and provide the C5 worksheet. It's really guidance for those coverage options to the surviving dependents. Again, there's no signature required, but it is really helpful for them to see what their options are. So let's just take a quick look at that C5 worksheet. All right. So again, at the top here, it tells us what our scenario is. We have a deceased employee. In section 1, it's going to ask us a couple of questions. And so it's asking us A, B, C, or D. So A, the employee has passed away while enrolled in SEBB insurance coverage. They're receiving the employer contribution. B, within 31 days of terminating SEBB insurance coverage. C, within 60 days of terminating SEBB insurance coverage due to retirement. Or D, while enrolled in SEBB continuation coverage. And so down below you see it, if you answered yes to any of the circumstances above, you can continue with number 2 of this worksheet. So it's not asking you to say yes in all of these. It's if you say yes in one of them, they will be able to provide notification. This worksheet will provide notification to those surviving dependents about their available options for continuing coverage. So we're going to say that unfortunately in our circumstance, the employee passed while they were receiving the employer contribution. So let's just say section 2 here is the date the employer contribution ends. We're going to enter the last day of the month of death. Because we're in June, I'm just going to say the end of June. And as we scroll down here, it talks about when that coverage will end, last day of the month, and continuing coverage options. Continuing coverage options for surviving dependents. So here it talks about the options under SEBB continuation coverage, COBRA. And then it talks about the options under PEB retiree insurance coverage. They do have the option under both. And so this would provide notification to those surviving dependents on what these 2 options are available to them. And also talks about the remaining benefits, life and AD&D, long-term disability, medical FSA, and if they're enrolled in a health savings account. All right. I'm going to move back in here. So we're going to talk about one of those a little bit more complicated scenarios here. This is another one that we talked about for preparing for the end of the school year. So Julie works for Zillah School District and is an eligible school employee, receives the employer contribution. So Julie is placed on approved FMLA and PFML in August of 2020. So right towards the end of the school year, right? At this point in time, she's been placed on approved FMLA. We're going to complete and provide that C2 worksheet to her. So I have pre-filled one out and we're just going to review it quickly. So let me open this up. just so you can see what a completed C2 worksheet looks like in this scenario. Okay, zoom in here. So we have our employee's name, information here at the top. Julie has been approved for FMLA, so we in section 1, which provided us an eligibility decision of yes, she will continue to receive the employer contribution. Section 2 here talks about the date that the FMLA leave begins. So we have August 15th of 2020. And I included her enrollment decisions for her coverages. So going to stay enrolled in medical, continue that supplemental life, not continuing with any supplemental LTD. And she did not have a medical FSA, so we're going to put in a no there. So this is what a completed C2 looks like for Julie's circumstance. But I think we have a little bit more information we want to talk about with Julie. So let's head back to the presentation. So Julie went on her approved FMLA in August, right towards the end of the school year. So I'm telling you now, Julie's FMLA lasts until October 30th. That's a new school year, right? So I just want to make that clear. So somebody can be on approved FMLA at the end of a school year and moving into the next school year, they will remain on benefits. Even if at the start of the school year, you're not entirely sure what their working status is going to be. And we're going to go through that here. So Julie's FMLA lasts until October 30th. And her paid family medical leave goes on for another 4 weeks. That ends November 27th. At that point in time, Julie's, once her PFML ends, she lets you know that she's going to go on an approved leave without pay all the way to March. So Julie's coverage ends the last day of the month in which her PFML ends because we can no longer anticipate that she's going to reach 630 hours in this school year. Remember, she was covered, she received the employer contribution into the next school year, so she went on leave in August. We moved into the next school year. Her FMLA lasted through October. Her PFML continued on. It overlapped with the FMLA, so it goes through the end of November, but now she's not coming back to work. She goes on leave without pay. We can't anticipate that she's going to reach 630 hours in this school year. So at that point in time, we're going to provide her with another worksheet because we have an eligibility determination change. So here's where we're going to fill out the C1 worksheet. So let's take a look at that one. So this is where I wanted to show you guys that it could happen that you're providing 2 different worksheets to one employee in a school year because there has been a change in their eligibility status. And this one kind of spanned over the course of 2 different school years. So here for Julie, we have section 1. The employee has been authorized for leave without pay. And we said, no, she is not anticipated to reach 630 hours in this school year. Provides us with an eligibility decision of no. We enter the last day of work. In this case, this was the last day that her PFML ran out. That's section 2. It was November 27th. And in section 3, it says the date the employer contribution ends, which is the last day of the month, so November 30th. And this will provide notification to Julie of when her benefits end. Options for continuation of coverage in section 5 here, how to fill out an LTD or life insurance claim, and then there's that signature and date. So one thing I will acknowledge before we move on is we've had a few people ask, can I just provide this at the start of the FMLA? I know they're going to go out, they're not going to come back. I know they're no longer going to be eligible. So could I just provide this in August, this C1? in August, when she goes out on the FMLA leave, I know she's not going to come back and be eligible. And I would say that you could, but so much could happen between August and November. Maybe Julie does change her mind and wants to come back to work. So I'd really recommend trying to do this, you know, the month of, or maybe the month prior to when that coverage is going to end, to provide that notification. So we're going to head back to our presentation and close out before we get to some questions. So just going to go through those resources that we always talk about. The SEBB Benefits Administrator website. You have outreach and training here to help you. You can send us a fuse message for those more complicated scenarios. And if you have something more urgent, give us a call at the 1-800 number. We also have the SEBB board link for you. Highly encourage you guys to become familiar with the things they're talking about in those monthly meetings. There was just one yesterday. So the briefing book is included on the SEBB board website, so you can check out what they were talking about. And here is that Benefits Administrator website. Here is where you find those worksheets. Again, make sure you go here every time. Do not save those Excel files on your computer. You want to go to this website and pull up a fresh Excel document every time. Once you click on that link, this is the page that you will see. It talks about what you're going to be, how you can find the correct worksheet as you scroll down the page. And we do have a few more webinars scheduled. June 12th, so next Friday, we're going to talk about special open enrollment events. June 26th, we're going to go through retirement and then some accounting and billing. July 31st, we're going to talk about error correction. And August 14th, we're going to talk about preparing for the upcoming school year. One little caveat here, we do plan on having that D-series worksheet. We just don't have a date yet, so once we do, it will be provided both on this link here below, how to register, as well as we will send out a Gov delivery message letting you know that you can register.
All right, so now it looks like we have a few minutes to answer a few questions. Just keep in mind, if we weren't able to address your questions during today's webinar, we will get back to you sometime next week, most likely via Fuse, to get those answered for you. There is a question: if an administrator is separating employment effective 6/30 and is starting employment at a new district 7/1, do I complete the C3 worksheet or the A5? In this case, since you do know that they are transferring to another district, you would use the A5 worksheet. Let's see, we'll try to get a few more in before 11. Do we use the C4 worksheet if someone says they are leaving due to retirement but not actually pulling their pension for a couple of years? Yes, you would still use that C4 worksheet in this case. Let's see, we'll do one more. Bear with me, I'm trying to scroll through all of these. If an employee has been laid off as of 6/30 and they are not retiring, however, they are retirement eligible, would we use the C1 or the C4? In this case, you would use the C1 worksheet for that scenario. And I'm going to wrap up the questions since we are at 10:59. I do want to thank all of you for attending today's webinar. We really appreciate it. And also a reminder, we will be sending out a brief survey that will be emailed to you. We would really appreciate it if you could fill that out to give us some feedback. And again, thank you so much for attending today's webinar, and have a happy Friday and a great weekend.
Thank you, everybody.